The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict out loud. I gripped the wooden railing until my knuckles were white. My ex-wife Sarah's eyes locked on her lawyer, Marcus Webb. He whispered something in her ear, and she gave him a barely noticeable nod. A knowing smile formed at the edges of her lips. It was as if the air had been sucked from the room. Due to credible evidence of physical abuse, Mr. Parker is hereby denied all visitation rights until further investigation, the judge declared. I turned to see the fearful expressions of my children, Emily and Jake. They were sitting next to Sarah. Emily's tears soaked the collar of her shirt, while Jake stared at me with wide, innocent eyes. I wanted to comfort them, but I was at a loss as to what to say. "Stay strong, David," said my lawyer, Lisa Chen, as she gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "This isn't over yet. We'll prove your innocence." She spoke too late, in my opinion. The judge ruled in Sarah's favor, and there wasn't much I could do about it. The woman had conjured up an alibi that was too good to be true. She provided medical records to back it up. Records that stated her son Jake had bruises on his arms. Even better, she had a willing witness, one who happened to be her brother and former brother-in-law, the man I had helped get a job 2 years prior. He stood in the courtroom and lied about what he saw that day. I saw David grab Jake by the arm and throw him across the room. His voice was as smooth as marble. I could hardly believe the words coming out of his mouth. I wanted to scream and shout and accuse him of lying, but it was too late. The judge had already made up his mind. Sarah knew what she was doing. She had planned it out perfectly. False accusations and forged evidence were all part of it. Everything seemed so damning, so convincing, and yet so fabricated at the same time. I left the courthouse that day in silence. The sun shone brightly overhead, but its rays couldn't seem to pierce through the darkness that had fallen over me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Opening the text message, I read the words Sarah had sent me. "Let it go, David. You lost. I'm just trying to do what's best for the kids." That was the first time it had occurred to me that she wasn't trying to win custody of the children. She was trying to ruin me. I was alone in everything except misery as I walked back to my apartment that evening. I sat on the floor looking at old pictures of Emily and Jake. Their smiling faces stared back at me. I remembered the night we took those pictures. We were at the beach, and Jake was building sandcastles while Emily collected seashells. We had laughed and played in the surf until the sky turned an orange-red color. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. Those were the days when we were still a happy family. My wife and I had been happy. My kids had been happy. Now all of that was gone, and it was Sarah's fault. She had taken it all from me. I vowed right then and there that I would do whatever it took to see my kids again. I would fight for them until my dying breath. The only thing was, I had no idea how to begin. She had fabricated evidence that seemed impossible to refute. It was as if I was swimming in a sea of lies, with no life preserver in sight. What I didn't know was that the truth was hidden in plain sight. 2 weeks had gone by since the hearing. I hadn't seen my children in all that time. I tried calling them every night, but Sarah had blocked my numbers. She didn't want me to see them, and it was heartbreaking. I felt like I was living in purgatory. My coworkers at the office avoided eye contact with me. The whole town had turned against me, it seemed. I was viewed as some kind of abusive monster by the people who used to support me. That is, until one fateful evening, when I was going through old emails on my computer. Curious as to what else Sarah had hidden from me, I began searching my inbox for anything that might implicate her. That's when it occurred to me that we had set up an online account for storing our family photos. Sarah and I had created the account together, but she must have changed the password after our divorce. Wanting to see if there was anything else she was keeping from me, I attempted to log in with the old password. My heart pounded in my chest as the screen flashed before my eyes. She hadn't changed it. I began going through the folders until my eyes landed on one titled Backup Texts. My fingers trembled with anticipation as I opened the folder. Text messages upon text messages filled the screen. My eyes darted from one to the next until they landed on the most recent ones. They were between Sarah and her lawyer, Marcus Webb. I read the messages over and over again, my heart racing with each word. "Marcus, we need bruises," Sarah wrote. "Can you help me find a doctor who will fake the report?" "I know someone who can do it," replied Marcus. "Just make sure it looks legitimate. We need to make him look guilty." I continued scanning the messages for anything else that might incriminate Sarah. I found several other texts that explained the plan in further detail. "Jake fell off his bike today. There's a bruise on his arm. We can use that as evidence," texted Sarah. "Take pictures of him. We should build the case around that. Make sure Jake doesn't tell his dad," replied Marcus. "My brother will say anything I want him to say. He owes me money." "Tell him what I want him to say," Sarah texted. I was livid. They had planned this all out. All the evidence was fabricated. I called my lawyer, Lisa, right then and there. She answered on the first ring. When I told her what I had found, she was silent for a moment. "Send them to me right away," she said. "We have them, David. We have them." That night, I couldn't fall asleep. I kept reading over the texts, absorbing every word. Sarah had ruined my life and stolen my children. The pieces of evidence she had presented in court were all lies. Everything that had happened to me was because of her. But now everything would change. I knew it in my bones. I just had to figure out how to prove it. Lisa did an amazing job preparing for the hearing. 3 days later, an emergency hearing was set to reconvene the case. The judge was reluctant at first, but Lisa reminded him that we had new evidence of fraud. The new hearing was scheduled to begin the following Monday. I spent the rest of the week preparing for it. I went over the text messages again and again, making sure I understood them properly. Sarah had no idea that I could see them, much less that they would be used as evidence against her. Everything was set for the hearing on Monday morning, and I stood in the courthouse feeling strangely calm. I was ready to do whatever it took to win my kids back. Sarah arrived with her lawyer, Marcus Webb, shortly after I did. She gave me a disinterested look as she walked past me. She had no idea what was about to happen, but I was prepared. Her brother sat quietly in the back of the courtroom. He would be the one to confirm everything I said, and he would regret it when he realized the truth. The judge entered the courtroom, and everyone fell silent. Lisa stood and addressed him directly. "Your Honor, we have filed a motion to reopen this case in light of newly discovered evidence," she said. "The evidence in question proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Mrs. Parker and her witness lied about the bruises." Marcus Webb shot up from his seat. "Objection. That's harassment," he said. "My client has already been proven innocent." The judge silenced him with a wave of his hand. "Sit down, Mr. Webb. Let me see this evidence you're talking about." Lisa handed him copies of the text messages. As he read them, a look of disbelief crossed his face. He looked up at Sarah and then at Marcus. The courtroom was completely silent As the judge continued reading, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Sarah fidgeted in her seat, clearly agitated. "Mr. Webb," said the judge, "these messages indicate that you and your client are conspiring to produce false evidence in this case. Can you explain this?" "Your Honor, those messages were taken out of context," said Marcus. "They don't tell the whole story." The judge slammed his hand on the desk. "Out of context. They show you discussing the creation of false bruises and asking a doctor to lie about them. There is no context that makes that acceptable." Sarah began sobbing uncontrollably. This wasn't the first time she had lied, but it was the first time she had ever been caught. "Your Honor," I said, "Sarah is lying to protect herself. She knows what she did was wrong, but she doesn't want to lose custody of the children." The judge turned to Sarah's brother. "You testified that you saw Mr. Parker abusing his son," he said. "Is that true?" The man looked nervously at Sarah before answering. "Lie. I lied," he said. "Sarah made me do it. She said she would pay off my debts if I did what she asked." The courtroom was stunned. Sarah began sobbing even harder, but this time it wasn't fake. She knew she was going to be caught, and it was only a matter of time. The judge ordered Marcus Webb's arrest for conspiracy and evidence tampering. Sarah was taken into custody for perjury. I couldn't believe what had just happened. After everything, the truth had finally come out. Emily and Jake were safe, and their mother would never hurt them again. The judge ordered that I be granted sole custody of the children, effective immediately. I stood in the courtroom, watching the officers lead Sarah away in handcuffs. As they pushed her out the door, I saw tears streaming down her face. 3 months had passed since that fateful day in court. Everything felt so different now. Each morning, Emily and Jake woke up in my apartment, having breakfast together before I took them to school. It hadn't been easy in the beginning. The first few weeks were especially difficult since they missed their mother and struggled to understand what had happened. But soon after, their wounds began to heal. Emily no longer had nightmares, and Jake was laughing again. In fact, he had asked me to teach him how to play the guitar. The judge sentenced Sarah to 18 months of probation and forced her to seek counseling. He also ordered that she no longer had any contact with Emily and Jake. Marcus Webb lost his law license and was under investigation by the Bar Association. My brother-in-law was also under investigation for perjury. He begged forgiveness, but I couldn't bring myself to accept it. Perhaps one day I would, but not today. As I sat in my apartment one evening, I found myself thinking about all those text messages. "We need bruises. Make him look guilty," Sarah had written. She had done all of that to me, and it was because of greed and spite. Sarah was willing to destroy everything, even her children's lives, just to win. She had nearly succeeded, but I fought back, and it paid off in the end. I had fought for my kids, and in doing so, I had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us. But that doesn't mean we should stop loving them. It means we should continue to love them, even when they do horrible things. It means we should continue to trust in the goodness of others. And most importantly, it means we should never give up. I remembered the conversation I had with Emily last week. She was sitting on the couch with her big brown eyes looking up at me. "Dad," she asked, "why did Mommy do all those horrible things?" I didn't know how to answer her. "Sometimes people make bad choices," I said, "and sometimes they do bad things because of anger. We can't control what other people do, but we can control how we react to it." She gave me a big hug. "I'm glad I'm with you, Dad." I was grateful for that moment, and I knew it would always stay with me.